The election campaign is gaining momentum in the USA. A show under the slogan of democracy, where often the one with more money is right. The most expensive elections in the world break records with each new battle for the White House. Bloomberg recently noted that Harris is spending more than Trump in the race for votes. Every day, 7 million. Trump only has 2.6 million. How do finances affect the election outcome? How much money is needed to become president? And who really opens the door to the White House? Just the facts, you draw the conclusions. The expenses of the recent election campaign in the USA set records, exceeding $14 billion and doubling compared to the budgets of the previous White House battle. In 2016, politicians were much more modest.
It is noted that these $14 billion include expenses for the presidential candidates' campaigns, participants in the race for seats in the House of Representatives and the Senate, national committees of the Republican and Democratic parties, as well as political action committees. Overall, in the last half-century, the expenses of election campaigns for the highest office in the USA have increased more than 1,000-fold.
Once they started with just $2 million.
Such enormous figures, which truly astonish American elections, are due to the fact that in America it's a huge industry. With a large number of political technologists, political scientists, experts, public opinion specialists, and party machines of activists involved who are largely fueled by these elections, and it's a way to keep these machines in shape.
That's how budgets have inflated over the last half-century. The road to the White House has always been paved with green bills, but today the spending is simply gigantic. In the 60s, John Kennedy could hardly imagine that his $10 million for a campaign in the 21st century would be enough for just one day. Nixon, Reagan, Clinton's sharp jump, and then just a galloping increase in election spending. Trump and Biden in 2020 seemed not to count losses at all.
Let's compare with 1992. Then a third, racer, independent candidate, billionaire, Ross Perot participated in the race. He was by no means a weak competitor, seriously influencing the balance. Perot, unlike previous independent candidates, participated in three-way televised debates, gaining 18.9% of the votes, more than any independent since 1912. So, Ross publicly announced that he was putting $1 billion on his victory. The legislation allowed this since these were not foreign contributions, but Ross's personal money, and he could spend as much as he wanted.
$1 billion in the early 90s, today, at our prices, probably all $10 billion. But even with such an amount, the businessman was very far from the cherished goal.
And now consider that both Harris and Trump are counting on winning with their money, but Ross, with his current $10 billion, wouldn't even come close to victory, just as he didn't in 1992. What funds really need to be invested in an election campaign? How many billions have candidates hidden from the eyes of ordinary Americans? Somewhere around $9 billion each, at least.
Elections in the USA are called by different names. Theater, show, performance, pantomime. Two things remain unchanged. Voters, as a rule, decide nothing. And Hollywood passions require cool decorations.
The U.S. presidential elections require large funds. After all, you need to finance trips across the country, staff salaries, production of campaign materials, services of dozens of consultant political technologists, rent of premises, organization of rallies, conferences, conventions, and finally, advertising.
Now, briefly, how the financial machine works. Only the presidential candidate himself can make unlimited contributions to his campaign fund. There are restrictions on other donors.
Every U.S. citizen by law can contribute no more than $2,800, to the needs of the election campaign. Funds can also be contributed by political organizations and political action committees. These are organizations that unite people based on business, labor, or ideological principles. From one such organization, a candidate can receive up to $5,000.
Americans know how to confuse the viewer. Since 2010, super political action committees have appeared in the country.
For them, unlike just political committees, there are no limits on the amounts collected, and it is there that large sponsors often pour big money. Directly transferring to the election headquarters seems to be prohibited by law, but there is a loophole here too. No one prevents, for example, organizing a large-scale campaign to support their candidate with this money.
So it's not the candidates competing, but financial magnates and corporations for their right to receive dividends. So ordinary voters decide little here, money decides everything.
Fundraisers collected $400 million for Trump from April to June this year. In 2016, the candidate raised the same amount, but over the entire election campaign.
Huge sums came in during the active consideration of court cases against Trump in May-June 2024. For example, on just one day, May 31st, more than $450,000 was received by funds supporting the former U.S. head.
For 200 years, a two-stage election system has been in place in America. First, the Electoral College is chosen by popular vote, and then it chooses the head of state, so that the winner is the one who gathers more electoral votes, not direct voters. And there is also a 2-month uncontrolled early voting, non-admission of observers, and a bunch of other nuances of local freedom.
The procedure for presidential elections in the USA is significantly different from the procedure in other democratic countries of the world. It is complex and multi-stage, and winning among ordinary voters does not guarantee a candidate's election as head of state.
Indeed, the elections are going very poorly. It's all poorly organized. Yes, there are a huge number of loopholes in the law that allow various pacifications to be arranged and allow the establishment to seize power. And not share power with those they do not consider deserving of winning the elections. In general, the point is that they are very dirty in the West, and we need to talk about it. A separate feature of American elections is the debates. Showy conversations in front of the camera sometimes make you laugh, cry, and feel very sad. So it is this time. At first, everything seems logical. The candidate presents their program, and people decide whether to support them or not. But here's what actually happened.
If Donald Trump were president, Putin would have captured Kiev by now. We must understand why NATO's European partners are now grateful that he is no longer president. Let's first say that people don't come to her rallies. And she pays them to come? I suggest we leave these debates now and see her go to Washington.
We're wasting time now.
Let's go. She was so bad it was awful. Let's go to Washington. Let her sign the law that will close the border.
Trump's phrase about Democrats eating cats even became a viral hit on the internet. They eat cats, they eat cats. Judging by social networks, the meme with Trump hit the top trends. Harris tried to interrupt him. The politician had important statements, but the manipulations left only earrings, which could have been earpieces.
American journalist Johnny King stated that during the debates, Harris used a special Nova H1 earpiece, disguised as an earring. That's why the politician was constantly taking notes in a notebook, although both are categorically prohibited by debate rules. However, the discussion moderator did not see any reason to stop the debates in the Democrats' actions.
Such debates are obviously a real show. This is also indicated by American accounts. They approach the discussion, which essentially decides the future of their country, as if watching a movie. Social networks are filled with such photos. Popcorn chips party.
We've come to the point where we have two showmen trying, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Live on air across the country with commercial breaks now even paid, where ads start at 500,000. And they call each other names across the country, inventing some inappropriate nicknames for each other. They are not fighting. This is not about creating political strategies and strategies for the development of the USA. It's some kind of name-calling and bullying from two immature teenagers.
There's nothing wrong with popcorn, but under the crunch of corn and chips, presidential candidates are essentially trying to decide the fate of the world. The war in Ukraine, the conflict with China, finally, nuclear weapons. Here the appetite disappears. However, we are not the first to criticize the culture of American debates.
Debates today have turned into a farce, a kind of entertainment show where you have only 1 minute or 90 seconds or 3 minutes. You are physically unable to formulate any idea in such a time.
Another publication, The Washington Post, declared the debates a show program where people speak without responsibility. Although the fact that public beating of each other, theater of farce, absurdity, and madness became clear already in 2016, after the clash of Trump and Clinton. Then the media wrote about a new level of idiocy.
You can talk about it in any words, but Bill Clinton behaved indecently with women, and Hillary Clinton only criticized these women.
How wonderful that the laws in the country determine a person without Donald Trump's temperament.
Because in that case, he would be in jail.
Okay, Donald, I understand that today you are ready to talk about anything, just not about your company and the fact that more and more Republicans refuse to support you.
Let's see what happens next.
There were also debates between Trump and Biden, but essentially a copy of the meeting between Trump and Clinton. History remembered them as such a parody. In debates, everything is classic. The masses are sold the wrapper. What's inside doesn't matter. The main thing is to check the box where needed. And make some money. Advertising during breaks between rounds is one of the most expensive in the world. $120,000 for 30 seconds.
Real American presidential elections take place among bankers, industrialists, military and intelligence bigwigs, and also mobsters. You haven't forgotten about Don Corleone, have you? So don't pretend his heirs have disappeared. They're not in casinos, but in negotiation rooms. Can you imagine Lockheed, General Motors, or Chase Manhattan Bank nervously biting their nails and watching where the electoral ball will fall? These corporations don't like randomness and love to plan. They'll buy the croupier, the table, and the whole casino just to bring their plans to life.
As they say, everyone understands everything, but continues to pour water on the mill of political America. But how long will Americans last? Especially since the mood in society is, to put it mildly, not great. This is indicated by a CBS and YouGov poll.
Only 6% of Yankees think everything is fine in the USA. The overwhelming majority of Americans consider the situation in the country bad. 34% of respondents said things are going very badly in the country. 32% rated the situation as bad, and only 6% think everything is fine in the USA.
Americans are extremely dissatisfied with the state of the economy. 59% of residents rated it as bad or rather bad. Surprisingly, the same number, according to another Medium portal study, are tired of the election race and want calm elections. But we all know the show must go on. Such are the circus traditions and local customs. I hope this will be clear. Goodbye.